Welcome to the SEO Insider with your host, Seth Price, founder of Blue Shark, taking you inside the world of legal marketing and all things digital.
Thrilled to be here on the SEO Insider today with Guy from Attorney Sync, as well as a formidable investor in early stage tech startups in the legal space. Welcome, Guy.
Seth, always great to see you. Thanks for having me. Love chatting with you.
We've been, talking about this stuff for longer than I'd like to acknowledge. And
We're getting old, Seth.
we are. The people at the company keep staying the same, and I keep getting older. But one of the things that has been top of mind, I want to get your thoughts on, is that as SEO has developed, the need is greater because paid search is getting harder and harder to do. But as you know, SEO not for the faint of heart, and that in providing this to the public, and something I've heard you espouse, you almost have to become a 360 consulting agency to make sure the different parts are aligned. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you, and we've talked about this in the pre-show, but I know your experience is similar. I mean, look, firms come to you at all sorts of different phases of their business growth, maturity, whatever you want to call it. And they go in, we're in a lot of the same Facebook groups together, and you see the questions, who do you like for SEO, or like, what's a good SEO thing, or what should we be doing for SEO? And I'm always like, well, first of all, what's your business objective for this coming year? Do you have fee targets? Do you have growth targets? Do you have cost per client targets? And then you start talking about like how you want to spend your time and money, because you might think you want SEO, and I think this is the most clear example of this. Is people think, when most people think about SEO, they think about ranking for something, and you can rank all day, but if you have negative reviews, bad reviews, no reviews, your phone's not going to ring. Or maybe you got great reviews and you're ranking, but you're not answering the phone consistently, and you don't have what I would my hot button issue right now is this dual source attribution idea, where it's like, look, your analytics, your web analytics, and your call tracking and your CRM, they're doing last click attribution. And people on the phone, when you ask them like how they heard about you, they're like, my neighbor referred me your name, and so I searched on your name. Now your attribution system is going to say organic, and it's like, well, what was it organic? It's like, well,
They a referral, right?
Yeah.
And I tell the story, the second largest case in Price Benowitz history. I still to this day don't know how they really got to us. It was somebody allegedly told them something. I'm convinced it was just regular search, but you just don't know. And I think that, you sort of started down this path, which is, there's a check the box. I got to do something, but understanding what you're getting. And I think the one good thing that has happened for SEO geeks like us is that the increase in cost for paid search, and that even though LSAs are really desirous in the PI space, they really haven't been a home run across the board in the non-PI B2C legal space, that all of a sudden what went from, and I still remember this, when we started our agency, somebody came from the great Attorney Sync to us. I'm like, why the hell are they coming to us? Like, he's great at what he does. And I remember you were charging them like $2,000 a month and didn't have those resources. And we were like, hey, we're going to charge $4,500 or whatever it was. And the idea that you're not just paying a flat amount, but what resources do you want, with the idea of how are you going to be able to, if the answer is you just said, hey, I want to be able to get 10 cases a month, it's not a free lunch. And if you're putting, $2,500 a month into it, that's $250 a case. There's not generally a way to get that. And so I think that has been the good news, is that people are taking a second look at SEO, because despite it being pushed down on the page, it's still with time one of the only places to beat that 3-to-1 ROI.
Search hasn't, we've been saying this for years. Search has intent. You're capturing interest, demand capture, when they're looking for it, what they're looking for. That's always going to be search's leg up. The other thing that I think though it's been refreshing to see. It's almost like one of these full circle ideas, but this isn't really. It's more in like the demand generation side. But I do think that that's been the other consequence of the the performance non-brand paid search prices going up, is that people are redeploying ads towards demand generation, right? So they're doing more like some of it's display, some of it's offline, some of it's paid social. But that to me, when you start trying like, and we all know we've see, I'm sure you have people that have the whatever pound gorilla you want to talk about are moved into the DC area. It's super competitive. Same thing in all major markets. You're seeing these lawyers partner up with local lawyers, or they're opening their own offices, or all that kind of stuff. In order to compete with that, and Ben Glass talks does a nice job talking about this, I think. You got to be doing demand generation. You've got to be getting people to actually want, they're thinking of you at that key time. And and lawyers know this stuff, right? Like, it's like, but they forget that, like, people forget about you. You have to be top of mind with them all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we talk to lawyers and they're shocked when someone they know refers somebody else a case, and they're like, we're like best friends and you didn't refer me that case. What's going on? It's like, oh, you're just not the person I thought of when that key moment came up. And so I think, that's not so much it's SEO to the extent of tracking your brand growth, right? Are people searching for your name and your firm name and permutations of that? Is that growing? That's a good leading indicator of, like, yeah, we're in demand. Like, we are in demand. And it's a lot easier to rank for, Price Benowitz than it is to rank for, DC car accident lawyer, although you probably rank for both of those.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. We did a radio spend not that long ago, and numbers shot up. And I got to tell you, one or two people attributed their phone call to radio, but our numbers substantially shot up with the campaign.
And,
I think it goes to what you're saying, which is if you can hit your demographic, which is very hard to online, the idea that you're always there with them, that it translates some of it's subconscious when they're going through these SERPs. They have the intent, they're looking for a lawyer. Oh, I know this brand. I think that's the advantage that some of the big TV players have brought to the table, in that it's, as you get something hit into your noggin enough times. And we've always talked back and forth over the years about sort of the advantage of paid PPC in getting you out of the sandbox quicker, or with SEO. And it's kind of evil if you think about it. Like, they could easily not count that traffic. And there are articles about it once in a while, but there's nothing really definitive on it. But the fact that, traffic, and that Google's not changing, whether you mention paid, whether you mention social, whether you're talking offline, whatever that is, that these touch points not only are good for the noggin, but it's also feeding the search engine. And that the idea in a competitive market that you're only going to do digital, I think is for the first time, I'm thinking, hey, there needs to be other stuff in the mix.
yeah, and I lots to unpack in there. I'll tell you my take on this, and I'm probably maybe I'm in the minority camp. But you look at the stuff that came out of the Google antitrust case. You look at the slides. You read stuff like AJ Cohn at Blind 5-Year-Old, his article. It's Goog enough. People should check that out. It's pretty obvious to me that Google is using user interaction data to inform or to train their organic ranking algorithms. And so why is that relevant? Well, because if you have a brand and people are disproportionately searching on your brand and disproportionately clicking on your pages when your brand is coming up in search, whether it's because they recognize your brand name or your favicon, or there's data for Google to latch onto there. I think that does reward those sites and those pages. And so, yeah, I think it's as nefarious or as evil as there's some kind of like, hey, you buy ads and your organic rankings go up. I mean, if that's going on, I mean, massive lawsuits are coming for Google. I don't think that's what they're doing. I think maybe there's like, hey, when we saw the email, right? The ads team email going back and being like, hey, we got to hit these numbers. Can you do something organically to get globally more clicks like that. I think that's even problematic. But I think the real magic is the brand investment. And, and Eric Schmidt, maybe he wasn't thinking about it to the extent that we're talking about it today, but brands sort out the cesspool. That whole idea of, if people come to your brand, you're looking for a lawyer and Price Benowitz, or you're looking for a lawyer and you see the brand, and those pages are getting a disproportional number of the clicks because of the brand. I'm very convinced that you're getting rewarded on the non-brand search side of the house too, organically.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and look, it's when you look at the paid side, they look at click-through rate is so important, and that when you raise that, there's some version of that going on the organic side. Let's pivot into local. Very exciting news for those of you who have not heard. But Guy is going to be co-hosting a local U event in Detroit with Joy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Come to Detroit for local U. I'm very grateful. I got my Red Wings hat on. I know we're in a battle for that last wild card spot with the Capitals, which is, as we're recording, that game's tonight, right? So
that is, and so basically, what Caps win, they're in. They lose, and you win, you're in.
I think that's right. I was looking at it. It was funny. I went to the game last night. I'm going to go short on this, but I was looking up the NHL playoff rules. If we're tied in points, I don't know if Caps go up in points if they win tonight, and we win. I thought there might be tied.
I think it is tied.
And if we're tied, then I think it goes to who has most wins overall, or they call it like non-overtime wins or something. Anyway, it gets a little complicated. Anyway, come to Detroit. I am so grateful to be help participating and host local U. Joy Hawkins, one of the preeminent local SEOs, and that whole community really, I think that they've just
Mike Blumenthal will be there, I assume.
I honestly don't know. I know for the Detroit session, because they're running one in New York too. So if you can't make it to Detroit, get to the New York one. They're doing some more of them on a regional basis. But Greg Gifford will be there in Detroit. Another super sharp SEO. And I think that we're, it's very, very local focused. So I know your audience is probably mostly lawyers. We're going to spend some considerable time talking legal, because that's what I'm interested in too. But if there are if people that are in Detroit or looking for an excuse to come, we're going to go catch a Tigers game too. If you're a small business marketing person, get to local U. I think it's a super, super valuable opportunity for folks.
Yeah, I found that when early on as local was burgeoning, and people like Mike Blumenthal and eventually Joy, who entered the scene later. I mean, the amount of time and thought they put into this stuff. Talk to me a little bit about local. It obviously is dominating the search landscape, particularly the legal space. What are you seeing? It's funny, I went back and looked. Our original recording of this is when I first started this podcast a number of years back, and one of the things that we looked at was the spam was so crazy. I kind of feel like, to their credit, they did get rid of a lot of the Russian bots that were doing the one review, and that was sort of for niche names. They seem to have done a decent job of cleaning up. What's your perspective on that?
Man, and they have really, their PR team has really gone to work in trying to be more transparent about how they're combating spam. But to me, it's like a drop in the ocean. I mean, the fake reviews are out of control. There seems to be you see some big examples being made, but I still think that that's a huge problem. And again, is it spam, not spam, to have business keywords in your business name? If you change your business to include keywords in your business name.
And look, the good news is they gave you a path to do it legitimately.
And to me, that's almost like table stakes now. I'm always like,
right.
I'm always super impressed when a firm who hasn't changed their name is ranking. I'm like, nice job.
Yeah.
I think more a big picture outside of the context of spam. One thing that's been really interesting to me is to see their testing of location of the local pack and SERPs. So, historically we think of local pack as like being the preeminent real estate under ads, right? Like local pack usually comes up for those lower funnel specific queries, but I've seen a lot of tests where the traditional localized organic listing, there's actually a couple of them above the local pack. And so whether you get back into this old game of like, well, you're competing with directories and stuff, but when you become the only game in town and you're doing structured data markup and it's showing a rich aggregate review snippet, which is not supposed to, because that's against their guideline too. We've seen that disproportionately have a huge impact where we're like, hey, this is weird. Our average position in the local pack has gone down, but because we're ranking, in the one spot with a traditional organic result, phone calls are even going up. And so that's another thing I tell people, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, is like, what should you be focused on? And again, it's like it's got to be cost per qualified consultation, cost per client by channel. That's what I would be focusing on. I think especially in PI, it's tough to think about like return on investment because the time window is just too big. Eventually I think those are good things to look at, but if you're looking short term, like, hey, you want to, is my marketing department or is my SEO partner or my digital marketing partner more generally, is this working? It's got to be couched in terms of like volume and cost per acquisition of consultations and cases.
I think, but also what makes that particularly challenging is that you don't know that up front. I mean, that's the payoff. And I think that the bane of the SEO company's existence is getting people to the point where that's there. And that once somebody is there, then you're sort of off to the races. But before that, it's a dream. I sort of was talking to you offline about the philosophy of not sort of presenting SEO to people that aren't interested in it, but people who are like, hey, I'm ready for SEO. What do you do and why should we use you? And that sort of rub, I think, has become sort of to me, as we've evolved as an agency, that the finding the client that's a rational player so important, because if people don't know what they're getting, it really just makes it a heck of a lot harder to and it takes a toll on staff.
100%. And I just posted about this on LinkedIn the other day because it was coming up in some context of conversations that we've been having, but kind of two things I think about it. And the first one is it's really about expectation alignment. But like if you're a small business of any kind, law firms included, if you can't talk about a P&L and your target fees and target marketing budget and where you're deploying resources and the different time frames for various marketing activities, going out there and being like, I want SEO, like it's like going out there and buying like widgets. It's like you don't even know what you're buying. And to a lot of their defense, there's a lot of obfuscation. I mean, you go to a lot of these conferences. I can't tell you how many times I go to these conferences and people that are paying to speak there are getting up on stage and saying things like, I guarantee you return on investment from SEO in a couple months. And I'm like, look, maybe in some instances that happens, but think about what that person's saying. They're saying someone's going to search a non-brand query. What they're implying, maybe they're not laying this out. They're implying that on a non-brand query, that person's going to call you, hire you, and pay you within a couple months in PI. I mean, come on.
Well, right, but look, to be fair, I'll give you the flip side of it, which is
Go ahead.
PI lawyers are looking at it based on cases coming in.
Right.
They'll fund it. So like take that as a given. But no, I think this goes back for as long as we've been talking, which is there are techniques, and I'm seeing more and more of this. I sort of put my head down, worry about myself, and yeah, we reverse engineer everybody in the space, but I am seeing spam come back at a level that I have not seen in a while. And I'm curious to see what happens. This will either age very well or not, but that early May, we're supposed to see some real significant spam updates from Google. And curious as to, look, I personally, Price Benowitz is not in such a major market where we need to spam reviews, right? We're getting legitimate reviews. Whereas if I was in Florida, I can't say that I'd have that same philosophy. If you're competing against a guy with 3,000 reviews, your 150 or 300 isn't going to move the needle. And so I think that, I'm curious to get your thoughts if you're seeing this, but I'm seeing it with some of the larger players out there, the piling of spam onto listings in a way that I hadn't seen since, maybe those early days where we were using the blog post commenting.
Yeah, man. People ask me all the time, they're like, March core update, spam up. So just to be clear for folks, and you can go look at the Google update dashboard because at least with these two, they've been transparent about the starts and the completion dates. So their latest spam update's already completed. And people are like, hey, do you see any impact? I'm like, nope, not in legal. And you
Right.
see a lot of these prominent, enterprise SEOs who are dealing in big areas, helpful content update, and they're seeing major swings.
Correct. So for the most part, for people that, that didn't like, my attitude is I just don't want to wake up one morning and see stuff gone. So we, for the, most part, plowed forward with that. But I feel that the enterprise level guys have really gotten crushed on this.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you can go look at if you just look for a helpful content update, you'll see the winners and losers. And Lily Ray does a good job of that. But people ask me all the time, what are you seeing in legal? And I challenge, and people listening to this, I'd be like, if you have a pure spam manual action for your law firm website, come talk to me. I want to see it. If you've seen major fluctuations based on whether it was the window of the latest spam update completing, and as Seth mentioned, the March core update, they're saying it's really not going to be finished until sometime in May. If you see major changes, I'd love to see them because I'm just not seeing them. And if the other thing that comes up is this thing about AI and Chat GPT, and Google's trying to get rid of all of this AI content. Go search. I just did it before the show, and just in case this came up, go search for Chat GPT for legal marketing. And I'll get myself in trouble if anybody from no one from Google is going to watch this show, but maybe if they do, I'll get myself in trouble. But our page ranks, and I just disclose at the top of the page. This page is written by Chat GPT completely, just copy and paste job, and it still ranks. Now, if you abuse it, can you abuse it? Sure, right? We've seen it.
That's my theory on why some of the spam may be working, because on the enterprise level, the spam level is crazy. Whereas on legal, it may be layered in. And that I feel like that as much as the legal people abuse it, they're not as crazy as some of these other industries. And therefore the algorithm just hasn't been excited about it to date.
I think that's right. I think so. Two things you said there, I think that resonate. One is that, look, and another person that I've always liked to have his point of this is Will Reynolds from Seer Interactive. He was real company stuff a long time ago. And so if you're doing real company stuff at your firm, I think you're gonna offset a lot of the signaling even if you're like doing some spam stuff. I also do think, post Panda and Penguin and all this stuff, a lot of the stuff that you might still be doing, because when we look at this, when we're doing that reverse engineering stuff you talked about, we see this stuff, but it's correlative. We don't know that those new influx of like really spammy PBN links are actually the thing moving the dial. We just see that they're not getting penalized, right? It's not hurting their rankings. They seem to continue to go up. My instinct is that some of them are still working. But I think a lot of them are probably like you're getting the influx, but it's probably not having a huge effect. Now, when you talk about fake reviews, yeah, that one probably, I don't think Google's very good at distinguishing between real reviews and fake reviews.
I don't think they have not invested in it. They could look. I remember
they say they have. They come out talking about it. I don't remember I'm going to make up a number. They say they nuked like, I don't know, 4 million or something fake reviews. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket.
I got to tell you, I remember a competitor in one market had reviews that said, "I've never used the firm, but they handed me a frisbee at the at some event," and I'm like, if that's sticking, anything's sticking.
Well, that's the thing, they have very inclusive guidelines. I think that one example you just gave is like pretty loose, but if someone has an experience with your firm, maybe they saw you speak.
And that's the piece that I've started to evangelize to clients, which is if somebody calls your firm and they don't like the tone of the person that answered the phone, that's an experience. I feel for restaurants, because if you don't have a reservation and you walk up to the podium and say, I want in, and they say no, to me, I would like, when I'm in charge, you're going to have a retainer or eat some of the food. You can't talk about an experience. Like on TripAdvisor, when you look at the 1 stars for the hotel you're going, the good places, their 1 stars are, I canceled at the last minute, they didn't give me my money back. It's that type of a situation. And I feel that what I'm seeing more and more is that lawyers, if they want to compete, have to morph their feeling of what a review is to an endorsement. This isn't like you should sit there with all of your buddies at a mastermind or a conference saying, I'll do you, you do me. Google sees those spikes, and that's obviously bad. But the idea that it needs to, that if you're going to get dinged for nominal interactions with your firm, a positive interaction, like somebody called and you can't help them, but they love you and they thank you for their time, the thank you translates into that, because if you're going to take the negatives, you might as well take the positives.
Absolutely. You know, and again, some of it is like it's focusing on what you can control. You can only control your side of the exchange on the client service side of things. But you better find ways to provide more remarkable experiences. You better find more friendly people to answer the phone. You better
Right. No.
find,
Right. When
maybe
you have bad reviews, you need to make sure, is there a reason that it's happening? Or is it, is it that person? The one thing that I was waiting for that I've never seen, I wonder if you have any data on this, was keywords in the firm responses. Have you seen anything pick up that would be helpful in any way?
No, and I think Darren Shaw at White Spark, I know you've had on SEO Insider, so folks can go check out that episode too. I think I think Joy too have done some research on impact on that. I haven't seen it. The thing that I have seen though, that's, it's not, I wouldn't call it a direct ranking factor, but again, when you start looking at search engine result pages through the lens of user interaction, it really reframes things for you, because what will happen is the keyword might show up as in a justification. And so that is helpful from a user experience standpoint. It might be bolded, they might, if it matches.
But are you seeing that from the responses or just from the review itself?
That's a great question. I believe I've seen it in both. But if you twisted my arm and give you an example, I can't think of one.
But next time we have you on, we'll get a definitive answer on
Yeah.
or what the latest is. Anything, what excites you about local? We're gonna have our Detroit and our New York local use, but what areas are you putting your thumb on when it comes to local search?
I mean, I kind of break it down into like three different buckets for local search. One is just, the visibility, share of local voice, showing up. And again, when I think of local, I don't even think about it in terms of like organic versus paid. I mean, look, as of right now, like them or not, LSAs are at the top of the page. You want to be competitive. You want to have visibility. To your point, I think that there are certain practice areas that the economics don't work out, right? Because the cost per lead and the conversion rate and the fee generated might not make sense.
Right. Very
PI,
often, I see it very often within the same practice area. A low dollar trust and estates person might do better than a high dollar trust and estates person. You just can't get the conversion for certain niches.
I think that's right. And just for the record, like that's the way what you just said is the way people need to be thinking about this, is like lifetime value of a client, target cost per client, target cost per consultation. What are the conversion rates at each of these stages? But LSAs, you got reviews, they're at the top of the page, finding ways to increase, the spend, which is tough. We've seen, and we're setting spend levels way through the roof, and they're still not spending. But then it's like booking rate and influx of reviews seem to make a difference, and engagement with the platform. But then I'm moving down the page and I'm like, look, if you look at us, if you got target queries where there's Google's showing a traditional localized organic result, not a local pack, you better have a page that's optimized to try to take advantage of that. And I see a lot of firms that, there's been this idea of like content consolidation, which I'm pro generally, but if you killed your page that was, quote unquote, more like a doorway or directory page, but it ranked, you might look at that, because if Google's showing those traditional local pages, you better be there with a localized resource to rank. And we can debate about whether or not to add aggregate review markup. But if competitors are showing it for the query, I'm kind of like, try to play it. I haven't seen any manual actions based on self-serving review markup violations. But
have you seen it? I mean, when was the last time you saw, I mean, granted, your world is cleaner than most, but when was the last time you saw manual action in your extended world?
I've only in legal, so I've seen them outside of legal. But the only one that I've seen directly in legal was a site that we created with the goal of trying to get a manual action, and we were able to trigger one, but it wasn't on a client site. It was on this like a test site. But I haven't seen one.
And what did you have to do to get that?
It was a unnatural link violation.
And you were using third-party spammy links.
Yeah, we were hammering links.
What percentage of them were that? And that was
100%. everything.
100%. So, and that's really the question is if somebody's, it's sort of like the AI content. If you're at 25%, does Google know or care versus, when you're at 90%, they're like, hey, enough's enough.
Yeah, and look, spamminess is a spectrum in of itself. This is the one that I always get in. Look, if you're getting these emails like I'm getting, like everybody's getting, it's like domain authority 90 guest blog post, and you're buying those links. I think you're at a higher risk and those represent 90% of the links that you're building. I think you're at a higher risk of triggering a spam.
But
however,
the question is, if you add 10 of those links to a site that has thousands of links,
they're known domains, like they're real domains that like have somebody there that are like, brokering links on the site. Yeah, I think at worst, most of those maybe Google's devaluing. Again, let me get the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is like you sponsor a youth sports team, and as part of that sponsorship, they put up something on their website that links back to your website. Now, technically, you're supposed to put a sponsored tag on that link, right? You're supposed to follow it. Do I think that Google really wants to penalize local law firms that are sponsoring youth baseball teams in local community? Like, no, I don't.
Generally, the site it's coming off of is not all that great to begin with.
But see, I'd be interesting. Maybe this is something that we have a slightly different viewpoint on, but I throw domain authority and page authority out the window for local link building. Give me something topically relevant. It's a real site, and it's or geographically relevant, like it's in your local community. More and more often, you don't even need a high volume of them. Like simple broken link building stuff where you're like, you crawl your local city or county site, and they're linking to some data resource, and doesn't work anymore. You recreate the resource on your site. You got to strip back some of your marketing stuff. You don't want to be on a template that's like super, advertising your law firm. And you reach out to the municipality, and you're like, hey, you got to put some broken links on your site. People in this community might want to have this. We recreate over here, link to it. That can move the dial a lot.
Yeah. The fundamental, it's amazing how more things change, the more they stay the same.
Well, that's the thing. I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I'm just like you, right? I'm one of these lawyers turned SEO people. I didn't study. I mean, I studied computer science for a little while, but I'm not an informational retrieval expert. I don't work on the search quality raters side of things. All I know is if I'm Google, I'm trying to sort out all these pages. What would I do? Links still is the gatekeeper. I can go to Price Benefits right now, copy every single page, put it on a new domain, and our content matches exactly. You can send me a cease and desist letter or DMCA takedown, like there's that kind of stuff. But content, it's only a difference maker to the extent that it drives signals that Google can use to distinguish it from other pages. And so what is that? It's links. I think that some of the brand stuff goes into that. There's some technical things you can talk about. And when I say links, internal linking structure matters a lot. I think some of as their content analysis algorithms get better, maybe, we could spend a lot of time debating about this EEAT stuff. But links are still they're the gatekeeper, because it's not that easy unless you pay somebody. It's not that easy to go out and get a link can motivate somebody to link back to your site.
Well, with that, I appreciate your time. I can't wait to catch up in Detroit or New York, but that is very exciting. And we will love to bring you back on the show in a little bit to see where this, if what we prognosticated comes true.
Can't wait, Seth. Thanks so much for having me. For your benefit, I hope the Capitals do well tonight. But for the Red Wings, I'm cheering for Philly.
I still have no idea how they beat a Boston team last night. That just seemed crazy.
Huge win.
Very good.
All right, my friend. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the SEO Insider with Seth Price. Be sure to check back next week for fresh insights into building your brand's online presence. Episodes are available to stream